The billionaire Sheikh's silhouette remained etched against the blinding sun as it dipped beyond endless dunes, his shadow long and unyielding across the palace's vast marble floors. Power radiated from his effortless stance, a man who commanded empires with a glance, whose name was whispered with reverence and fear alike. Yet beneath that cold exterior, something ancient and aching stirred. Inside the opulent oasis of the emirate, gold glimmered like captured sunlight, draped over every surface. Silk carpets, woven by hands that never met his gaze, stretched endlessly beneath massive arches that framed the endless desert beyond. Incense curled through the air, rich with cardamom and oud, wrapping the space in a fragrant cloak of distant lands and unspoken promises. The billionaire Sheikh's eyes, sharp and dark as onyx, scanned the horizon, but saw little beyond the weight in his chest, a void masquerading as control. His reputation was a fortress built on ice and steel, but tonight it cracked silently under secrets long buried. Then fate struck like a desert storm. She appeared, a ghost from a past he buried beneath layers of cloaks and neglect. Her figure weak, yet defiantly upright, standing in the doorway of a rundown hotel, bathed in the harsh flicker of a dying neon sign. Gone was the radiant woman who once bled passion into his arms. Before him now was a woman marked by silent suffering, pregnant, alone, and abandoned by the world he built so high. Their eyes locked, fire meeting frost. "Why are you here?" His voice cut through the dry air, sharper than the desert wind. She met his gaze without flinching, though her voice trembled beneath the steel. "Because you never asked, and I had nowhere else to go." The words hung between them, heavy, with years of pain and betrayal. His jaw clenched, torn between the storm within, rage for her silence, desire for a truth she refused to show, and an unbearable pull to save what he once destroyed. She stepped forward. The swell of her belly, undeniable, a testament to the nights and choices he never witnessed. "This child, it's yours." The revelation landed with the weight of a thunderclap. His breath caught in a choke of disbelief and fury. How could this secret have survived? How? Had fate so cruelly twisted their paths? "No," he hissed, stepping back as if the truth branded him. "You lied. You kept this from me." Her eyes brimmed with unshed tears, not from weakness, but born from battles fought alone. "I had to protect us, both of us, from what you would never forgive." A tense silence blanketed the room, punctuated only by the distant call of desert winds and the faint hum of a city that never truly slept. Then he saw it, a faint scar tracing across her wrist, barely visible beneath worn fabric. The price she paid for love, for survival, for bearing a secret that could shatter him. The billionaire Sheikh's empire of pride trembled in the shadow of that fragile truth. Before the next secret of this vast emirate unfolds, check quickly if you're already part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave your like if the heart of this billionaire sheik already intrigues you. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga, and what twist do you think is about to come? Your passion for these dramas is what inspires us to keep sharing. Thank you for staying with us. The air between them crackled with a tension so fierce it seemed to burn the very space around them. The billionaire Sheikh's eyes darkened, hard as obsidian, yet somewhere deep beneath his ruthless exterior, a tumult began to ripple, a tempest awakened by the fragile figure before him. Her words, the confession she had guarded like a precious jewel, hung heavy in the stale air of that dim hotel room. The child inside her was not merely a secret, but a living testament to a past he had buried beneath layers of pride and denial. He stepped closer, the scent of oud mixing with the dry desert breeze slipping through the cracked window. His voice dropped low, laden with disbelief and bitter accusation. "Why did you never tell me? Was I not worthy of knowing the truth? Or did you think I would turn away from what binds us?" She swallowed hard, the swell of her belly pressing against the frayed fabric. Of her dress, a relentless reminder that time had not paused for either of them. Her eyes, fierce and unwavering, met his. "I was afraid of your wrath, of a life you might never accept. This child, our child, deserved more than to be hidden in shadows." For a moment, silence claimed the room. The distant hum of the city was a faint murmur, overshadowed by the raw emotions pulsing between them. The billionaire Sheikh's fingers clenched into fists at his sides, struggling to hold back the storm inside. His voice softened, a rare vulnerability cutting through the steel of his persona. "I have built empires on certainty, on control. But this changes everything." A flicker of doubt crossed his face, quickly masked by the icy calm he wielded like armor. "You don't have to face this alone anymore," she whispered, a tremor betraying the strength she fought to maintain. "You abandoned me, yes, but I never stopped believing there was still a sliver of the man I loved buried within you." He turned away momentarily, the vast opulence of his desert palace reigniting in his mind. The cold marble halls, the shimmering gold that no longer brought comfort. How hollow such grandeur felt when weighed against the fragile truth standing before him. Behind him, the soft scrape of fabric caught his attention. She approached, tentative, placing a hand on his arm. The touch was light, yet it sent a jolt through him, sharp and undeniable. "I need time, but I cannot deny the life growing inside me. It deserves your protection, your love," she said, her voice barely above a whisper but charged with unyielding resolve. He nodded slowly, the fortress of his pride beginning to fissure. "We will face this together. But there are dangers, those who would see this secret used against us, who already cast shadows upon our union." Her eyes flicked briefly to the window, where the desert night had swallowed the last rays of fading light. "Enemies lurk not just outside these walls, but within your court. Intrigue, envy, even blood." A bitter smile curled on his lips, the weight of his responsibilities settling once again like chains around his shoulders. "I am no stranger to betrayal, but this... He paused, struggling to find words strong enough to hold the magnitude of his confessions. "This is war on a different battlefield." Suddenly, The sharp echo of footsteps sounded beyond the door, a measured, approaching presence that chilled the air. Instinctively, the billionaire sheikh stepped in front of her, his protective stance unwavering. The door creaked open, revealing the court advisor, a man whose eyes gleamed with ambition and secrets of his own. He bowed slightly, masking a sly smile beneath his beard. "My sheikh, a message has arrived. It demands your immediate attention." "What message?" the sheikh demanded, wary. The advisor's gaze flicked between the two, calculating. "From the Eastern Coalition. It seems your secrets are more exposed than you might believe." A cold shiver raced down the sheikh's spine. He locked eyes with the woman beside him, the bearer of his concealed truth, and saw reflected there the silent storm gathering. He turned back to the advisor, voice sharp as a blade. "Bring it to me." As the advisor withdrew to retrieve the message, the woman's hand found his again, a silent pledge amidst crisis. Yet the child she carried stirred with a restlessness that mirrored the unease tightening his chest. The palace suddenly felt smaller, the desert beyond more endless and unforgiving than ever. The billionaire sheikh's mind raced. This was not merely a secret between two souls anymore. It was a spark, flaring dangerously close to igniting the tinder of power, envy, and vengeance that surrounded them. And in the shadows of this sprawling empire, a figure watched, waiting for the moment to strike where the sheikh's heart was most vulnerable. The message would soon arrive. With it, the fate of the child, the woman, and the empire itself would hang perilously in the balance. His grip tightened on her hand, eyes blazing with a fierce determination no power could quell. Because where love sparked, so too did war. And the billionaire sheikh was ready to fight. The court advisor's footsteps faded as the door closed quietly behind him. The weight of the unopened message lingered in the air, heavy like the desert heat pressing against the golden marble walls of the palace. The billionaire sheikh's grip on her hand tightened briefly, a silent vow that, whatever storms were to come, he would not face them alone. He turned, his dark eyes restless, tracing the faint worry etched into her delicate features. The palace, once a fortress of sanctuary and solitude, now felt like a cage closing in around them both. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows, dancing on walls adorned with ancient tapestries and glittering chandeliers. Yet, none of this grandeur could shield them from the truth that now stood between them like a chasm. Her breath hitched as a sudden pain flared in her side, not labor, but a cruel reminder that her body was no longer entirely her own. "We must move carefully," he murmured, his voice low, threading warmth into the cold night. "Enemies on every side, secrets like ours, are weapons waiting to be wielded." She nodded, fighting to steady herself. "I never imagined the cost would be this high," she replied, voice fragile but resolute. "Not just for me, but for the child. For us." The billionaire sheikh's expression softened, a rare glimpse beyond the armor of his power. "I was a fool to believe I could control everything, but I've never feared the impossible until now." Outside, the desert wind whispered against the palace windows, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and distant storms. It seemed nature itself anticipated the battles looming on the horizon. He stepped closer, brushing a stray lock of hair from her brow with surprising gentleness. "You have been bearing this alone for too long," he confessed, the honesty raw and ragged. "No more." A fragile smile flickered on her lips, though tears threatened the edges of her eyes. "I wanted to believe in you," she whispered. "Even when you abandoned me, even when your silence was louder than words." The past, haunted by betrayal, regret, and broken promises, hung heavily between them. But now, beneath the weight of looming threats and the fragile life she carried, something fragile and defiant stirred. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door startled them both. He moved swiftly, instincts honed by years of power and peril taking the lead. "Who is it?" The voice on the other side was smooth, yet venomous. "A friend. Perhaps something far worse, my sheikh." The door opened to reveal a figure cloaked in shadows, one of the palace's trusted aides, but eyes cold and calculating. "My sheikh," the man said, bowing slightly, "those who watch your every move grow restless." The Eastern Coalition's message was more than a warning. It was a challenge. The air thickened with palpable danger. The billionaire sheikh's mind raced as uncertainty gnawed at him. Who else knew of the secret child? Who else could wield that knowledge like a dagger? He looked to the woman beside him. Her hand in his was trembling, but her spirit unbroken. "They are coming," he said grimly, "not just with words, but with intent to destroy what we hold most dear." Her eyes widened, but the flicker of fear was swiftly replaced by unwavering strength. "Then we fight, together." In that moment, the vast emptiness of the palace fell away. What remained was a connection forged by pain and the unyielding will to protect their fragile family against the encroaching storm. The sheikh turned to the aide. "Prepare the council. We make our stand at dawn." As the man bowed and left, the room grew still once more. Her voice broke the silence, soft yet fierce. "There's more you don't know. Someone in your court confides with the enemy." His dark eyes snapped to hers, sharp as the desert knives that lined his walls. Betrayal cuts deepest when it wears a familiar face. She swallowed a lump, nodding. "We've been blinded by our own walls, but no more." A tense silence settled over them, broken only by the soft, steady beating of her heart. Nearer now than ever, a thudding promise of life amid the gathering shadows. The billionaire sheikh's jaw clenched, resolve blazing behind his onyx eyes. "Prepare yourself," he said, voice hard as steel. "Not just for the battle outside these walls, but for the war within." Suddenly, the flickering candlelight caught on a folded piece of parchment that had slipped beneath the heavy silk drapery. A letter unknown to either, its seal broken. His hand darted forward, gripping the paper. The sheikh's eyes scanned the words, and a deadly chill gripped his spine. The letter bore a name, a whispered threat that turned the air icy in its revelation. As he looked up, the woman beneath the golden glow met his gaze, her face pale but unyielding. The enemy was closer than either had dared imagine, and the fragile bond between them was about to be tested like never before. The letter trembled slightly in the billionaire Sheikh's hand, its edges softened by time and secrecy. An uninvited messenger, threatening to unravel the fragile peace they'd just begun to weave. The inks of betrayal and danger intertwined across the parchment, spelling fate in a language darker than desert night. Even in that small gesture lay the weight of unspoken fears. The room, drenched in golden candlelight, suddenly felt claustrophobic. The distant murmur of the desert wind outside only emphasized the silent war encircling their sanctuary. Between expensive brocades and whispered prayers, the empire was no longer merely a palace. It was a battlefield, and its most vulnerable occupants stood unarmed. His gaze shifted to her, and in that glance flickered something raw and fractured, a mix of resentment, longing, and reluctant surrender. He could no longer deny the chasm his own pride had carved between them, nor silence the echoing question that clawed at his soul. Was redemption still within his grasp? Who sent this? His voice was low, barely more than a growl, the calm before a gathering storm. From the Eastern Coalition, she whispered, voice trembling. They know our secret isn't safe. The accusation hung unspoken, yet deadlier than any blade. Knowing the truth now came with its own price. The threat of enemies clawing at every door, every shadow in his court. He folded the letter with deliberate care, but the resolve in his heart was brittle. This changes everything, he breathed. Every alliance, every whispered promise we thought secured. Her eyes searched his face, fierce despite the exhaustion etched in her skin. We cannot afford weakness, not now. He moved away from the window, where the desert moon cast pale light on his features, and toward the heavy velvet drapes pooling at the floor. The weight of centuries seemed to press down on him through the opulence, golden tassels brushing his fingers like chains. Our enemies are clever, he said, but so am I. I built this empire with blood and fire. A bitter smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth, but it died beneath the gravity in her gaze. And what of the war within? She challenged softly. The enemy you don't yet see? He paused, the question slicing through his armor. The court advisor's sly smile, the whispered intrigues in gilded halls, the piercing gaze of an ally turned traitor. All cartoons now painted in sharp relief against his memory. You warned me, he said quietly. I did. You must trust me. Her hand slid down to rest on the swell of her belly, and her fingers curled protectively. This child is not just a secret. It's a beacon for those who wish to undo everything. The words settled like dust in the thick air. Outside, the world forged on, indifferent to the tiny life growing amidst titans of power and betrayal. He exhaled slowly, fighting the waves of anger and helplessness crashing inside him. Then we'll light that beacon ourselves. Let our enemies see we will not be broken. A deep silence wrapped around them like a prayer. Neither dared to speak the name of the traitor rumored within their midst, but both knew the truth festered dangerously close. Suddenly, a rustle from the far side of the room shattered the stillness. The Sheikh's eyes snapped toward a figure emerging from the shadows, one of his most trusted guards, face impassive yet serious. "My Sheikh," the man said with measured urgency, "there's news from the palace gates. A stranger demands an audience, claims to hold truths that might save or destroy us." The billionaire Sheikh's heart hammered, a relentless drum of warning. "Bring him to me." As the guard bowed and vanished, the woman stepped closer, her gaze burning with fierce resolve. "This is no longer just about us," she murmured. "It's about the future." Their worlds, once shattered by betrayal and silence, now began to converge into a single path. A desperate fight for survival, love, and honor. A storm had gathered above the sands, dark and unforgiving. But within the walls of the palace, two fractured souls prepared to defy fate's cruel hand, united by a bond fragile yet unbreakable. And as the heavy doors opened once more, revealing a figure cloaked not only in mystery, but in peril, the billionaire Sheikh's breath caught, because this visitor was not merely a bearer of news. He carried a wound, a secret worse than any threat outside, and the fragile hope they clung to was on the brink of shattering forever. The flickering candlelight barely held back the gathering shadows as the Sheikh's dark eyes darted across the cryptic words sprawled on the fragile parchment. Every letter seemed to pulse with menace, the weight of their meaning pressing down on the opulence of the palace like a suffocating desert storm. His breath hitched, the silent threat coiling through his chest like a venomous snake. Beside him, her hand trembled in his grip, the fragile life growing within her, echoing the tension that twisted the room. She searched his face, finding a mix of fury and fear, power and vulnerability, a man unmasked beneath the layers of pride that ordinarily shielded his soul. Who could betray us? The question was barely a whisper, but in it lay the roar of storm clouds ready to break. "The Eastern Coalition," she answered, her voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers. "They've not only learned of our child, they know the truth about us." He crushed the letter with a sudden ferocity that made the crystal pitchers on the sideboard quake. The cold, hard marble beneath his fingers seemed to echo his own fractured resolve. "This changes everything," he muttered, voice low and ruthless. "Trust is a luxury we no longer possess. Every alliance, every promise, now tainted." His gaze burned into the sprawling shadows of the room, as if searching for the shape of the traitor lurking among his closest. A sharp knock tore through the silence, jerking both of them from their spiraling thoughts. "Come in." The heavy doors swung open to reveal a figure garbed in the somber silk of royal guardship, face grim as though bearing the weight of a grave omen. "My Sheikh," the man said, bowing with a formality that did little to mask the urgency in his voice. "A stranger awaits your command. Claims to hold truths that may yet turn the tide." The Sheikh's jaw clenched. His hand shot out, gripping the woman's with a strength meant to reassure and to shield. "Bring him here." His gaze then, fierce and unyielding despite exhaustion and pain. "We stand on the edge," she said softly. "The future is no longer ours to decide. It's a battlefield." The courtyard beyond the thick stone walls lay silent under the moon's indifferent gaze. Yet within, the air crackled with a tension born not just of danger, but of fragile hope. Hope threaded between desperate hearts and a shared uphill fight. As footsteps echoed down the marble hall toward them, the sheikh pulled her closer, the warmth of her body a fragile fortress against the encroaching storm. "This alliance," he murmured, voice thick with unspoken promises, "will be forged in fire." Moments later, the visitor entered, a man whose eyes held shadows darker than the desert night. His cloak barely concealed a jagged wound bleeding through the fabric, a testament to battles fought in silence and shadows. "My sheikh," the stranger's voice was hoarse, edged with urgency. "Time runs thin. Forces gather beyond the borders, and within your court, the serpent coils ever tighter." The sheikh's eyes narrowed. The court advisor's sly grin, the whispered plots behind gilded doors, pieces now falling into a deadly puzzle. "And this wound?" the sheikh asked, voice sharp as the desert knives lining his chambers. The stranger's glance flickered to the woman. An attack meant to silence the truth, a warning. But the truth will outlive all threats. Tension snapped like a drawn bowstring. The woman's hand left his and pressed protectively over her swollen belly, her eyes blazing with a warrior's resolve. "We cannot hide in shadows any longer," she declared. "If they seek to destroy what we are, we will burn brighter. Our child is more than a secret. She is a beacon." The sheikh's gaze settled on the woman, raw admiration fighting with his instinct to shield her from harm. "Then we will stand together, unbroken." The room seemed to contract, the weight of the impending battle folding into the space between them like a living thing. Suddenly, the quiet creak of embroidered silk broke the fragile peace. From the far corner, a figure slipped forward, an unexpected presence that sent a jolt of alarm through both. "Your trust, it will be tested," she whispered, her voice venomous yet masked behind a righteous calm. The sheikh's eyes drilled into her, icy and unforgiving. "You've played your cards long enough." The woman beside him stepped closer, hand finding his once more, the pregnant swell a living symbol of their fragile union. "Enemies lurk within, clothed in loyalty," she said, voice low and fierce, "and one of them holds the keys to our doom." The shadowed figure smiled, a cold, bitter curve. "You think you know betrayal? You have yet to learn its full cost." The sheikh's fist slammed against the marble pillar, a sound sharp as thunder. Every thread of the empire he wove now threatened to unravel at the seam. He pulled the woman gently into his side, their bodies a fortress against the night's dark tides. "Prepare yourself," he whispered, voice edged with iron and desperation, "because the enemy I feared was never beyond these walls. It dwells in the hearts of those who claim to stand with us." Her breath hitched, eyes wide but resolute. "Then let them come. We will face their storm as one." Outside, the desert wind howled, a wild, mournful song that echoed the turmoil of two souls bound by secrets and fighting against a fate that sought to divide them. In the shadows, beyond the palace gates, unseen eyes watched, calculating. The game was far from over, and as the Sheikh's eyes met hers once more, a new terror clawed its way to the surface, one that whispered of a betrayal more devastating than any they had yet faced. For the enemy waiting in silence was no stranger. It was someone he had once called family. The flickering candlelight quivered against the palace walls as tension settled like an oppressive heat. The billionaire sheikh held the folded letter with a grip so tight his knuckles whitened. The name scrawled across the parchment was poison, a whisper that could unravel every carefully stitched thread of his empire. Her hand found his once more, trembling yet resolute. The life growing inside her was a fragile bond, a secret now a beacon and a target all at once. The weight of that truth settled heavily between them, heavier than the richest gold adorning their world. Outside, the desert night pressed close, silent but alive with secrets. Somewhere beyond the glittering towers and marble halls, destiny crept like a predator. "I must know," he said, voice low but edged with steel. "Who dares threaten us from within?" Her eyes flickered, shadows crossing her face like a storm on the horizon. "There is someone you trusted. He walks these halls, wearing loyalty, but his heart harbors treachery." A bitter laugh escaped him, harsh and without humor. "Traitor in my court. Of course. The serpent always coils closest to the throne." He let the letter fall onto a gilded table. The gold of the palace suddenly felt cold, hollow. Their sanctuary had become a cage, each whispered secret a shard of glass, threatening to cut deeper. She placed a trembling hand on her belly, the swell undeniable, a living symbol of hope and vulnerability. "We cannot afford doubt, not with enemies circling, not with a child to protect." The sheikh's gaze burnt into hers, fierce, protective, but laced with desperation. "And yet, how do we find this shadow? How do I protect what I barely understand?" She stepped closer, courage rising like a flame, despite the weariness in her eyes. "We'll expose the darkness together, no matter the cost." A distant echo of footsteps cut through the silence. They both turned toward the heavy doors that creaked open once more. A man entered, cloaked in midnight blue, his eyes sharp and unreadable. He bowed deeply. "My sheikh, the stranger, waits in the council chamber. He insists his words cannot wait." The sheikh's jaw tightened as he nodded. "Bring him here at once." As the guard left, the princess of shadows and secrets traced a path beside him. Their alliance, now forged not just by blood, but by impending war. The palace corridors seemed alive with whispers, every corner dark with promise and threat. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, compressing the small space between their hearts. "We face enemies outside and within," he murmured, voice raw with unspoken fears. "But you and this child are the center of my world." Her breath hitched, a mix of fear and longing threading her throat. "And I was foolish to believe I'd bear this burden alone." He pressed a kiss to her temple, gentle and fierce, all at once. "No more secrets, no more exile in shadows. Together, they stepped into the grand hall, where chandeliers spilled liquid light over marble floors. The distant howling of the desert wind pressed against the towering walls, a reminder that the world beyond their gilded cage was as brutal as it was vast. The guard returned, motioning for them to follow. As they reached the chamber doors, the air thickened with anticipation. Inside waited a figure whose presence unsettled the very air. His clothes were tattered, his face etched with battle scars, but his eyes burned with a fierce urgency. "My sheikh," the stranger said, voice rasping. "Time runs thin. The Eastern Coalition grows bolder, and within your palace, the venom spreads, a poison hid beneath smiles and promises." The sheikh's gaze narrowed, burning into the visitor's truth like a desert sun. "Speak plainly. Who bears the dagger cloaked in friendship?" The stranger's eyes flicked toward the woman who stood firm beside the sheikh, her hand never leaving his. "The one you suspect least. He moves freely, gathering secrets, waiting to strike when you are weakest." A chill slid down the sheikh's spine, heavier than the desert night air. His mind raced through faces and moments, 1,000 crowned lies hidden behind courteous bows. This man, his voice dropped to a fierce whisper, his treachery will cost us everything. The woman's eyes flashed defiantly. "Then we must strike first. Reveal the traitor before he delivers the final blow." The stranger nodded. "But beware, Sheikh. His reach extends deep. Allies may fall. Trust will fracture." The room itself seemed to shrink, every breath taut with threat and resolution. The fragile sanctuary of palace and heart alike trembled under the weight of looming betrayal and war. The sheikh turned to the woman, his voice softer, yet no less steely. "Our child will be born into a world of fire, but I swear, I will forge a shield from that very flame." She met his gaze, an ember of hope igniting fierce and bright. "And I will stand beside you, come whatever storm." Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open again, a rush of movement breaking the frozen moment. Soldiers flooding the hall, their faces grim. A herald stepped forward, unrolling a scroll with trembling hands. "My sheikh, an urgent dispatch. Enemy forces have breached the eastern border. The siege begins now." The sheikh's eyes widened, the weight of his empire crashing upon his shoulders. The distant echoes of his father's words rang in his mind. Power was never given. It was claimed, defended, and bled for in the hardest crucibles. He turned to the woman who bore their legacy beneath her heart, his voice a vow in the gathering storm. This is only the beginning, and somewhere, deep within the twisting shadows of the palace, a traitor smiled, finally ready to strike at the heart of the billionaire sheikh's world. The heavy scent of oud lingered in the air, blending with the sharp bite of tension that cloaked the palace chambers. The billionaire sheikh's dark eyes bore into the folded letter resting on the gilded table, its silent threat pulsating like a heartbeat, a brutal reminder that the empire he had forged rested not only on gold and steel, but on fragile trusts now shattered. Her fingers trembled lightly in his grasp, the tiny life she carried, a fragile pulse against the storm surrounding them. The swells of her belly pressed against the intricate fabric of her gown, a vivid emblem of hope, vulnerability, and danger all entwined. "We are no longer mere pawns in distant games," he whispered, voice thick with the weight of revelation. "This betrayal, it cuts deeper than any sword." She met his gaze steadily, fierce, despite the exhaustion shadowing her delicate features. "Somewhere inside these walls, there moves a serpent cloaked in loyalty." The words tasted bitter, but the fierceness in her eyes held a warrior's fire. The flickering candlelight danced, casting sharp shadows across the marble, as if the palace itself recoiled at the truth. He crushed the letter with a sudden, savage grip. The crystal decanters on the sideboard quivered, shards of reflected light fracturing in the chaos of his wrath and vulnerability. "This changes everything." His voice cracked like thunder in the stillness. "Every alliance, every promise and whisper is now stained with suspicion." The air tightened, suffocating like the desert heat pressed hard against the palace walls. Her gaze drifted toward the moonlit window, where golden sands stretched endlessly, indifferent to the fragile lives and deadly secrets housed within these walls. Suddenly, the heavy doors creaked open, breaking the oppressive silence. A figure, clad in the midnight silk of royal guardship, entered with grave purpose. "My Sheikh." The guard's bow was quick and tense. "A stranger awaits. He claims to hold truths that may tip the scales." In this war of shadows, the Sheikh's jaw clenched, knuckles white as he tightened his grip on her hand, their fingers entwined like lifelines amid a gathering storm. "Bring him to me." Her breath was shallow, eyes burning with desperate resolve. The battlefield is no longer just outside these walls. It lies within the very heart of this palace. The distant murmur of the desert night pressed against the thick stone, cold and silent, but alive with threats unknown. Inside, the palace pulsed with feverish anticipation, the golden threads of power and deceit, taut and trembling. As footsteps echoed against marble floors, he pulled her closer, the warmth of her body a fragile shield. Her head rested against his chest, heart fluttering beneath silk and brocade, like a fragile bird in flight. "This battle," he murmured, voice breaking with unspoken fears, "will be forged in fire and blood." The doors widened, admitting the stranger, whose presence rippled with urgency and peril. His cloak was tattered, stained with past wounds, the silent scars of battles fought in shadows. "My Sheikh," the man's voice rasped, a sharp contrast to the opulence surrounding him. "The Eastern Coalition grows bolder, and our own court festers with venom, poison cloaked beneath smiles." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed to cold slits, scanning the visitor with fierce calculation. "Who?" he demanded, voice steel cutting through the thick tension, "betrays us behind a mask of loyalty?" The stranger's gaze flicked toward the woman, who stood unwavering, her hand never leaving. "The Sheikh's. The one you suspect least. He moves like a shadow, gathering secrets, waiting to strike when you are weakest." A razor-sharp chill ran down the Sheikh's spine, deeper than any desert night was cold. Faces flashed in his mind, smiling allies, veiled threats, treacheries buried beneath courtly smiles. His voice dropped, thick with controlled rage. This treachery, it will cost us everything. Her eyes blazed with unyielding light. Then we strike first. Expose the shadow before it consumes us. The room pulsed with impending storm, a fragile sanctuary crackling with the violence of unspoken truths. The sheikh turned to the woman, voice tender beneath the steel. Our child will be born into a world ablaze, but I vow to forge a shield from this very fire. Her gaze caught his, embers of hope smoldering fierce and bright. Before the moment could settle, the heavy doors burst open. Soldiers poured in, faces grim and pale under the flickering torches. A herald advanced, unrolling a scroll with trembling hands, voice strained. "My sheikh, enemy forces have breached the eastern border. The siege has begun." The weight of the empire crashed down like a desert tempest on the sheikh's shoulders. His father's haunting words echoed. Power is claimed with blood, defended with sacrifice. Stars outside glistened cold and distant, uncaring of the turmoil within the golden cage. He turned to the woman, bearing their legacy, a vow burning like a brand in his eyes. This is only the beginning. His mind raced, but more chilling than the siege lay the haunting certainty of betrayal close at hand. For the enemy waiting in silence was no stranger. It was one he had once called family. The sealed parchment folded beneath the silk drapes suddenly seemed heavier than any gold or jewel in the palace. The sheikh's fingers clenched around it like a man gripping a lifeline, fragile yet vital. Outside, the desert wind whispered cold secrets against the marble columns, as if warning the palace that its walls were no longer sanctuary, but battleground. She stood close, the heavy swell of her belly a testament to nights haunted by silence and fears. Her eyes, fierce and unwavering despite exhaustion, searched his face, not for answers, but for a promise. The kind of promise only born from shared battles and whispered regrets. He met her gaze. The onyx depths of his eyes flickered with something rare, tenderness and torment woven together. "A traitor in my court," he murmured, voice low, bitter as desert thunder. "One who dresses loyalty like a veil to mask his dagger." Her fingers tightened around his, a silent vow unspoken, but as loud as the storm raging between them. "We cannot let suspicion consume us. We must be sharper, faster. The enemy wears a familiar face." The grandeur of the palace suddenly felt oppressive. Glittering chandeliers cast fractured light, but could not illuminate the shadows, growing between trusted allies and hidden foes. The scent of oud mingled with tension, thick and suffocating. His jaw clenched as countless memories flared. The advisor's sly smile, a glance exchanged in corridors dripping with deceit, whispered conversations behind gilded doors. Each image a knife twisting deeper into his pride. "They've breached our walls before," he said, voice steel hard now. "But this betrayal cuts deepest. It threatens to unravel everything." She moved closer, her breath shallow but steady, the heartbeat of their unborn child compelling her forward. "Then we expose the snake before it strikes again. No more hiding in the shadows. A faint knock echoed through the heavy silence. He gestured sharply. "Enter!" The doors opened to reveal a royal guard, his face grim, urgency etched into every line. "My sheikh, the stranger, awaits in the council chamber. Demands his words be heard without delay." The sheikh's gaze flicked to the woman, her eyes, fierce despite the pain shadows beneath them, met his with a desperate strength that unsettled the fortress around his heart. "Bring him here," he ordered. As footsteps faded down the marble hall, he pulled her close, his voice a low rumble, dripping with heavy promises and dark resolve. "We stand together against this storm. No more secrets between us." She pressed her forehead to his chest, the fragile rhythm of her heart, a stark contrast to the battle they faced. For us, for the child. The heavy doors swung open again, revealing a man cloaked in battered midnight silk, his face a map of scars and exhaustion. His presence carried the weight of unseen wars and grim truths. "My sheikh," his voice rasped, edged with desperation. "The Eastern Coalition moves boldly. But worse, the venom festers at your own hearth. A traitor walks freely, cloaked in friendship." The sheikh's gaze sharpened, eyes narrowing like desert knives. "Who speaks through poisoned lips?" His voice cut through the thick tension. The stranger's eyes flicked to the woman at the sheikh's side, unwavering, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "The one you suspect least, one who gathers secrets, strikes when your guard is down." A chill ran down the sheikh's spine, colder than endless nights in the desert. Faces flashed through his mind, the smiles hiding daggers, the loyalty draped in lies. "This betrayal," he whispered, through clenched teeth, "could bring the empire crashing down." Her voice broke through, fierce and undeterred. "We must act before we are consumed. Strike first as the snake prepares to coil." The chamber seemed to constrict around them, tension crackling like electricity. The opulence of the room mocked their vulnerability, the golden tapestries and glimmering chandeliers, unable to protect against treachery. The sheikh's hand found hers again, protectiveness shining through the rage. "Our child will be born into fire, but I swear, I will forge a shield from these flames." Fierce hope sparked in her eyes, though the shadows of fear lingered. Suddenly a commotion shattered the fragile moment. The heavy doors burst open as soldiers flooded the hall, faces grave and paling under wildfire torches. A herald stepped forward, unrolling a scroll with trembling hands, his voice strained. "My sheikh, enemy forces have breached the eastern border. The siege begins now." The weight of 1,000 desert storms bore upon the sheikh's shoulders. Power was earned with blood. His father's voice echoed through his memories. He turned to the woman who held their future beneath her heart, a vow carved deep into the cadence of his voice. "This is only the beginning." But beneath the roar of battle drums and whispered betrayals, a darker secret awaited. A shadow within, a dagger cloaked in a familiar face. His gaze locked with hers, burning with fierce warning and unease. The true enemy was no farther than the breath between them. Someone he had once called family. The first morning light spilled gently over the palace, painting the marble floors in warm hues of gold and rose. Outside, The desert stretched vast and eternal, its endless dunes kissed by the soft glow of dawn. A silent witness to the storms that had passed and the peace that now bloomed within these walls. The billionaire sheikh stood by the arched window, his silhouette softened by the early light. Gone was the cold fortress that had once defined him. In its place was a man transformed by love, battle, and sacrifice. A man who had learned to wield his greatest power not through fear, but through trust and redemption. His gaze fell on the woman beside him, her hand resting protectively over the curve of their child's life. Her eyes gleamed with a quiet strength, born from years of endurance and hope. She was no longer the fragile figure he had found in a rundown hotel. She was his equal, his companion, and the mother of his son. The heavy weight of secrets and betrayal that had once threatened to tear them apart had been laid bare and confronted. The traitor, whose venom had nearly poisoned their world, had been exposed in the light of justice. His name no longer cast a shadow over their home or hearts. Their enemies at the eastern border had been met with unwavering resolve. The siege had tested the very stones of the empire, but it had not broken its ruler nor his people. The Sheikh's forces, united and fierce, had turned back the tide, their victory a testament to their resilience and the unbreakable spirit that now bonded the Sheikh and his family. She moved closer, her steps light but purposeful. The swell of her belly was a living symbol of new beginnings, hope tethered to the future. Their fingers intertwined, a silent vow renewed, a promise sealed not by gold or decree, but by love and shared survival. "I see the dawn differently now," she whispered, her voice carrying the softness of the morning breeze. "Not as the beginning of another day, but as the start of everything we fought to protect." He smiled, a genuine curve that touched the depths of his soul. "Our child will inherit more than sand and gold," he confessed. "She will inherit a legacy of courage, love, and truth." Their gaze locked, a world of forgiveness and understanding passing between them. The walls around them no longer held secrets, only memories tempered by time, memories of pain, perseverance, and the redemption that had brought them here. Beyond the palace gates, the court had risen to greet this new chapter. Allies once uncertain had pledged loyalty anew, their allegiance now rooted in respect and admiration for the sheikh who had chosen love over pride. The whispers of betrayal had been silenced by acts of courage and transparent hearts. In the grand hall, the lofty ceilings seemed to breathe with renewed life, and jasmine blossoms, carefully tended in the royal gardens, filled the air with delicate perfume, a fragrant promise of peace reclaiming its place. The sheikh's steady hand brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, his touch reverent and tender. "Whatever storms come next," he murmured, "we face them as one, stronger, wiser, and united." A gentle breeze stirred the silks draped over their shoulders, carrying with it the distant call of birds taking flight, a fitting melody for souls reborn from the ashes of hardship. She rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, a rhythm that had always been both a shield and a sanctuary. "We have weathered hell," she said softly, "and now we rise." The promise of their child stirred within her a quiet testament to their trials and triumphs, the embodiment of hope that would outshine even the most relentless desert sun. Together, they stood watching as the palace came alive with the first light of day. Their world no longer fractured, but whole, every crack mended with patience and love. The billionaire sheikh had finally found freedom, not in the power he commanded, but in the love he embraced. And in that moment, the empire was no longer defined by gold or gossip, but by the unshakable bond of a family, forged through fire, hardship, and unyielding devotion. A new dawn rose, not just over the sands, but over their hearts. It was the beginning they had earned, the end of their long night.